All right.
If you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in the matter now pending before the court will be the truth, the whole truth, excuse me, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, have a seat. And scoot on close to that microphone so we can hear you. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is Theophilus Pierce, but I go by Ted.
How do you know the Farris family?
I met Scott probably about 10, 11 years ago.
And how close would you say you and Scott are?
He's probably one of my closest friends.
Would you visit Scott where he lived at the farm?
Occasionally. I've been out there a few times.
What would you guys do together the most?
We played a lot of golf together.
Where would you play golf?
Mainly a place called Hampton Golf Village in North Forsyth.
Why there?
It was close to where, I guess closer to where I lived. My brother-in-law lived close to there. He'd play a lot with us, and it was a relatively inexpensive golf course. We play a lot of twilight golf.
Did you say relatively inexpensive?
Inexpensive, yeah. So $25, $30 around, you know.
So where is it that you live?
At that time, I was living in Dawson County at my family's lake house.
Okay.
I traveled a lot for work, so I wasn't home often.
What part of the lake? What lake was that on?
Lake Lanier.
What part of the lake was it?
It would be considered the north side of the lake.
So this was back in 2018 you lived at the lake house there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what year did you meet Scott?
Probably somewhere in the 2014, 2015 year, I would have to say.
How did you meet him?
I met him through my sister. She worked at a restaurant in Johns Creek that I would go up to pretty regularly, and he would go up to there because they were friends. And so she introduced us.
And so Scott, is pretty close to your whole family?
Yes, he is.
Were you with Scott the first week in July of 2018?
I was.
How every day? How frequently were you with him?
That week, definitely the first 3 days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we spent a lot of time together.
Were you at the farm the week before for Gary's birthday?
I do not recall if I was there or not.
About how many times would you say you visited the farm?
I've probably been out there no more than 6, 7 times, maybe 8 times.
In 2018, what did you know to be Scott's job?
Scott managed the farm, took care of the animals, maintenance around the farm, pretty much anything his dad needed on the farm was Scott's job.
Did you know how he took care of the animals?
In terms of, he fed them, he'd, ride the horses, he'd make sure they got out in the pastures when they needed to. Basically just like, as I envisioned it, what you would do to take care of animals at a farm.
Sure. And if his mom were to call him back to the farm and you were with Scott, what would he do?
He would usually go back. It would probably depend on what the issue was, but in most of the time he would go back because it was usually a big enough issue he needed to get back to get something taken care of.
Sure. So I want to talk about that first week in July of 2018, and we have a calendar here in case you need to look and see what days of the week we're talking about. So I want to talk about this week right here, okay?
Okay.
And what was your job in 2018?
In
2018.
2018, I worked for a company that manufactures dental x-ray equipment.
Okay.
And I still do.
Okay.
I'm still at the same company.
Were you in town that first week of July?
I was. I took that week off work.
Oh, you had the whole week off?
I took the whole week off, yeah.
And what did you do on Monday, July 2nd?
On Monday, July 2nd, I believe we played golf at the Manor that morning.
Who's we?
Me, Scott, and our friends Joe and Ryan.
Do you remember what time you teed off?
It would have been morning, probably 9-ish, I'd guess, on that day. I picked up Scott from the farm that morning, and we went to the Manor because it was relatively close to where he lived.
And what did you do after you played golf at the Manor?
I dropped him back off at the farm to get his truck, and then we went to a place called Rosati's for lunch.
All right. What did you do after Rosati's?
I left and went home.
And did you and Scott go your separate ways?
Yes.
Around what time was that?
I'd say that'd be I recall, sometime middle afternoon. If we had finished up with golf that day, it would have been around 12:31, and then we would have went and had probably a drink and some lunch at Rosati's, and then, yeah, probably 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Do you know if you and him communicated the rest of that Monday?
I do not recall if we, I mean, we may have, but it would have been a text or two at minimum, not a lot of conversation at that point.
Okay. So the next day would be Tuesday the 3rd. Did you see Scott that day?
I did.
What did you do?
Scott came up to the lake house, and we went out on the lake for the day.
Around what time did Scott come up to the lake house?
Probably early afternoon, would usually been about the average time he would show up.
What did you do at the lake?
Took the boats out, probably did some surfing off the back of the wakeboard boat, probably took out the pontoon boat. I believe we went and watched fireworks from the water that night from one of the marinas up there. But that'd be about an average day on the lake.
Do you know, did Scott stay for dinner?
Yes, he did.
How late did he stay?
Scott left just before 11 p.m. on that night.
Was your house equipped with any security cameras?
Yes, I had a Nest security camera in my front door, or front porch driveway area.
And after finding out what happened to Gary, did you have the opportunity to pull that footage?
I did.
And what did you pull?
I pulled the footage of Scott leaving that evening just for the timestamp out of more curiosity.
State moves to admit I guess it's just Pierce 1.
No objection.
I submit.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and publish this, Mr. Pierce. I'll go ahead and actually also move to admit Pierce 2, the screenshot of the timestamp.
No objection.
Pull this up first. This is Pierce 2 that I'm showing you. Is that the clip that you pulled down from
Yes,
Nest? And did you take that photo of the clip?
I took that photo with my cell phone, yes.
Okay. And so does that show the date and time of the clip itself?
Yes, it does.
Do you remember what day you pulled that down? And I say pulled that down, I'm inferring that you pulled that off of a cloud or some account that you have with Nest.
Correct. It's off my Nest account that I had at the time.
And you downloaded that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember when?
I initially downloaded it back probably in 2018, but lost that thumb drive, and recently was able to gain access again to my Nest account and was able to re-pull the footage down just a couple days ago.
Was it already saved in your account?
Correct, yes.
From when you first pulled it
From
down?
when I first pulled it, yes, ma'am.
And did you pull it down after finding out what happened to Mr. Farris, Gary Farris?
I did.
I'm going to go ahead and publish Pierce 2. I'm sorry, Pierce 1, the video clip. And so is 10:55 the time that that clip saved?
Yes, ma'am.
So once he left that night, when was the next time you saw Scott?
The next morning at Hampton Golf Village, we had I believe a 7 a.m. or 7:15 a.m. tea time.
When you arrived at Hampton Golf Village, was Scott already there?
Yes.
What time did you arrive?
I believe Philip and I arrived around 6:45.
Had you heard from Scott before arriving at the golf course?
He did text me a little bit earlier that morning asking if we were awake and ready to go.
So you golfed at Hampton Golf Club on, that would be the day of the 4th?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did it take you to do that round?
That round was probably about 4.5 hours. Typical round.
18 holes?
18 holes, yes, ma'am.
So that puts you around lunchtime.
Correct.
What did you do next?
We went directly back to the lake house.
Who's we?
Me, Scott, and my brother-in-law, Philip.
So did Philip golf with you that day as well?
Yes, ma'am.
You went back up to the lake house. Did you guys stop anywhere?
No.
Once you got to the lake house, what did you do?
Probably went back down to the dock, went back out on the boat for a little bit. I left at some point in the afternoon for a few hours to go visit a friend at, I believe, a pool party in downtown Cumming, and then came back up to the lake house a little bit later.
Was Scott still there when
Yes,
you
ma'am.
arrived back? And did you guys go back to that pool party later that
did.
evening? Tell the jury about that.
After I got back up to the lake house, everybody had kind of started packing up to go home. My mom went home. My sister and my niece and my brother-in-law went home. And I was planning to go back to the pool party, and Scott came with me because it was on his way home. So
What time was that, do you think?
probably around 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'd say.
How long was that drive from your lake house to the pool party?
About half an hour. 20 minutes to half an hour.
How long did you stay at the pool party?
I don't recall how long I stayed. I might have been there a little while.
How long was Scott there for?
Maybe an hour,
He
hour
did
and a
not
half.
stay as long as you
He did
did?
not stay as long as I did, no ma'am.
Did, when Scott, let me go back to the night of the 3rd. When Scott left the night of the 3rd, did he say why he was leaving?
He had gotten a phone call from his mom, and the horses had apparently gotten out, and he needed to go home and take care of that.
Did he tell you why he was leaving the pool party on the 4th?
Just no specific reason, just to go home.
Did you all, when was the next time you heard from him?
I heard from him the following day on, I believe, the 5th, Thursday the 5th.
Okay. Did you guys have plans that day?
We did.
What were your plans?
We were supposed to go meet a friend of ours, club fitter at PGA Superstore down in Roswell to get fitted for custom golf clubs.
Did you end up doing that?
I did, yes.
You did go?
I did go.
Okay. Did you hear from Scott that day about what happened with his dad?
I did.
Okay. When he called you, did he say anything about what happened?
He had called me a couple times, if I recall correctly, that day. He had called me initially to tell me his dad was missing, and they were starting to look for him. And then a little bit while later, he called me again and said he thinks he found his dad's remains, or he found something that day.
Had you ever met Melody Farris?
Briefly, a couple times at the farm in passing. No, like, real conversations, though.
Would Scott share anything with you about his family when you guys would hang out?
Not a lot, no. I mean, we don't really talk about that.
After all of this happened with his dad and Scott finding the remains, how was Scott when you guys would hang out?
Afterwards, I mean, outside of, being upset and frustrated with everything that was going on, he was still pretty much the same Scott, just in terms of still a good friend, still there, still talk to you when you needed it. But he was different in terms, he was sad. He was sadder than normal.
Did he ever open up to you about his dad?
Not really. I didn't ask. It was a hard subject to bring up.
Did Scott eventually get a job after finding his dad's remains?
He did.
What job did he get?
For a little while, he was doing odd jobs, helping a friend of ours out with like cabinetry work and like just kind of home remodel, general contractor stuff. But then he got a job at a friend of ours owns a nursery in Forsyth County. He got a job working for him full time.
Did Scott continue to take care of the animals on the farm?
He did.
How do you know that he did that?
I talked to him pretty regularly. I mean, he was still out there, and we were still, we're still friends. So I mean, he would still tell me a lot of what was going on.
Who was providing the feed for the animals and doing all of the work that needed to be done?
He was from working. He was trying to keep it going as long as he could.
Did Scott love the animals on that farm?
He absolutely loved the animals on that farm.
How do you know that?
He talks about it now all the time, but I know he did. He absolutely loved working for his dad. He loved being out there on that farm.
1 second, Judge. That's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Pierce.
Good morning.
My name is John Luke Weaver, and I, along with Michael Ray, represent Melody Farris. Just a few brief questions. So 7-2 that Monday, you guys went and played golf at the Manor Club, which is kind of closer to where Scott lived.
Correct.
And y'all went to, what time was that tee time?
I want to say it was probably around 9, maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock that morning.
Okay.
I want to say. I don't 100% remember, but...
And you took the whole week off of work. Were y'all planning just like a guys' week, a golf week? What was
No,
going on?
I traveled a lot for work, so when there were holiday weeks, I would typically just, for myself, just take the week off work and just kind of do whatever I wanted to do.
So Monday it was you and Scott and your brother-in-law.
No, on Monday it was me, Scott, our friends Joe and Ryan.
Okay. All right. And y'all played at the Manor, and then you went to Rosati's.
Yes, sir.
And that's a pub over in Cumming?
Yes, sir. Off exit 13.
Sports bar?
Yes, sir.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
And how long were y'all there?
A couple hours, probably. 2, maybe 3.
So if you could get, how much did Scott drink that day? Can you remember?
I don't keep tabs on what he was drinking or how much, but no more than, maybe a couple beers at golf and maybe a drink or two at lunch.
Sometimes you guys smoke marijuana too, right?
I never have, no, sir.
But Scott does with you.
I've never seen him do it, but I've heard of it, but I don't know how much he did back then, no.
Okay, so you didn't see him smoke any marijuana that day?
Not on that day, no, sir.
All right. And what time did you say you guys got done with Rosati's?
It's 3:30 probably mid to late afternoon.
All right. And he drove home by himself?
Yes, sir.
Then Tuesday the 2nd, y'all played at where?
Tuesday would have been the 3rd. We did not play golf on Tuesday.
Okay. What did you see him at all on the 3rd?
Yes, he came up to the lake house and we spent the afternoon and evening with
What
my
time?
family on the lake.
Do you remember?
He probably got up there early afternoon. I'd say probably around 1 o'clock. That's pretty average.
Yeah. What did you guys do on the lake?
Same thing we always did. We'd either take the wakeboard boat out and go do some surfing off the back of it, or we would just leisurely take out the pontoon boat and just kind of putz around the lake. I've got friends that live on the lake. We'd go, dock hopping as we call it, go visit friends at docks and hang out and just hang out on the lake, enjoy the weather.
How much do you think you guys had to drink that day?
I'm the boat driver, so I typically did not drink very much out on the lake when I was driving. Again, I don't keep tabs on what anybody else was drinking, but Scott was not a heavy drinker that I recall, so maybe a couple beers.
Maybe a couple of beers?
Maybe a couple beers.
Did you see anybody take any shots that day?
My sister and brother-in-law sometimes would, but that day was not a very heavy drinking day. We had a less than 1-year-old on the boat, my niece, so we were just enjoying the weather and just kind of being chill.
And you remember this phone call that he received that night from his mother?
Well, I don't 100% remember it, but I know he got that phone call because he told me he got that phone call.
You he got that
Yes,
phone
sir.
call. When did he tell you that?
Right before he left.
Right before he
Right
left. So
before
you
he
didn't
left.
hear the phone call?
No, sir.
Right. And what made you, in your mind, think, I need to go and get in my nest and pull up this video of Scott leaving? When did that happen in your life?
Probably a couple weeks after everything had happened, and I knew I was going to get a phone call from Detective Hayes. There was some questions, and I guess just for my own memory, I was like, "What time did he leave?" I watch a lot of TV, so I watch a lot of crime dramas and
So
stuff
you
like
are
that.
you thought Scott's probably a suspect, or you already been alerted to the fact that Scott was a suspect?
I don't know if I'd been alerted to that. I just, for my own memory that day, because once I got back to the lake house that night, I probably had a little bit to drink. Once I was done driving for the day.
That night.
That night of the 3rd, probably, yes.
Yeah, so probably.
Because I lived there, so I slept there. I didn't have to go anywhere.
Right. You're pretty definitive about a lot of things that happened in those days, but you believed yourself to have probably been intoxicated by about 11 o'clock, yes?
I don't know about intoxicated, but...
But couldn't drive a car, you'd say that, right?
I wouldn't have, no, sir.
All right. Scott, prior to this, you guys would go play golf about how often?
I wouldn't play as much. Again, I traveled a lot, but on weeks where I was in town, we'd try to get a couple rounds in of twilight golf if we could.
Do you ever remember Scott telling you, I can't today, Dad says I got to work, stuff like that?
Not to those exact words, but there were times he couldn't play because
Okay.
he either had stuff he had to get done on the farm or whatever.
But he would complain sometimes that his father wouldn't let him go play golf, right?
I've never heard him complain about his father.
Okay. And you're his best friend, right?
One of his closest friends. I mean, I don't know if I call it best, but we're good friends.
How would Scott pay for things? Do you know that?
No, not really. I mean, he had a credit card or a debit card. I mean, he'd always pay with credit or something, a card.
Were you aware that he didn't have a credit card in his own name?
I was not aware, no, sir.
He had to use his father's credit card for everything.
I did not know that, no, sir.
Okay. And then Wednesday morning, you guys went and played golf,
Correct.
correct? And y'all went to Hampton.
Yes, sir.
Did that used to be called Hampton Farms? Because you call it Hampton Village. I didn't know if it was
It's always been called Hampton Golf Village to me.
Hampton Golf Village. And that's up closer to Dawsonville on 400?
Correct. It's north Forsyth County.
Right. Because then you guys went over to the lake.
Yes, sir.
Where is that lake house, by the way?
It's in Dawson County, South Dawson County, off Highway 53
Okay.
and War Hill Park.
War Hill Park. There we go.
Yes, sir.
And how did he seem that morning?
He seemed himself. We were all a little tired. I mean,
Everybody was a little tired.
Well, I mean,
because your brother-in-law testified to the same thing.
not a morning person myself, so I mean, I was always just a little tired, but it was kind of something we had started doing, playing golf in the morning on 4th of July for, I think this was our 2nd or 3rd year.
So it was a tradition.
We had started one, yeah, we wanted it to be one.
And it was something that you guys were going to keep no matter what, right?
We were going to try to, yeah.
Okay. You seem to remember in relatively good detail a lot from that weekend. So what was Scott doing prior to leaving the party that afternoon?
On which day?
The 4th.
On the 4th?
Yes.
What do you mean by what was he doing?
What was he doing?
Well, we
At
were
the
just
park?
hanging out with friends at a pool.
At a pool?
Yeah, there were like 15 people we knew there, and we were just talking, hanging out.
Where was
shooting.
this pool?
An apartment complex somewhere off exit 14. I couldn't tell you the name of the apartment complex right now, but it was pretty close to the highway.
Do you remember all the people that were there?
I could probably name 7 or 8 off the top of my head. It's the same typical group of friends that we always hung out with or always were around and still are around to this day.
Was there a keg at this pool party? I mean, most pool parties
I
have a keg,
don't
right?
recall there being a keg, no.
Shots?
I don't recall that either, no, sir. I'm not saying there wasn't, but I do not recall seeing it.
Beer?
Sure,
Mixed drinks?
probably.
Probably. You don't remember?
Well, I mean, I didn't bring anything because I wasn't drinking. Scott didn't bring anything because he was heading home afterwards. And so we went
Do you
by
know that
there.
for sure, or is that a probably?
That's a probably, but I didn't see him drink anything.
So you don't remember?
Not 100%, no, sir.
You either remember or you don't remember.
I don't remember.
Okay. If I may have one moment, Your Honor. That's all, Your Honor.
You ready?
Thank you, Judge. When Scott called you to tell you about Gary, did he say anything about his mom?
He did.
What did he say?
He said, I wonder if my mom finally did something.
That's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
No follow-up.
All right, you can sit down.
Thank you.